It's a simple question, but one that seems to be very hard for California Democrats to answer up in Sacramento, and it's who drew the maps? That's the simple question that we're trying to get at today. We're going to dive into that story, plus discuss who possibly could be the one who drew the maps. We're going to have that for you in just a couple minutes. But first, if you're part of the 87% of people who are watching have not subscribed yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It helps us with the algorithm. Let's jump into that story right now.
Our voters see the maps and make the ultimate decision.
Madam Majority Leader, I understand. I've heard all that. Who drew the maps? It's a very simple question. Names, preferably.
The Assembly.
The Assembly did it.
Okay, I'm in the Assembly and I did not draw these maps.
Well, you're not the leadership.
No, and I'm aware of that. But the same way that in this bill it says that the Assembly Elections Committee, not Chair Pellerin, not Assemblymember Salache, not Assemblymember Bennett, I am a part of that group. So by association, I have been lumped in, Mr. Bennett. So I'm asking, who drew these maps?
The legislature drew the maps.
Who specifically in the legislature?
The legislature drew the maps.
This is transparency that we don't get to know who drew the maps.
The legislature drew the maps.
No more to these snap cuts, no more to critical dollars being taken away from California. $5 to $10 billion is at risk here. And that is vital services for so many vulnerable Californians, including health care.
Madam Chair, but Madam Chair, California voters deserve to know who drew these maps. That's what we are asking. Don't they deserve to know who drew these maps?
Again, this is the most transparent process in the nation.
So then who drew the maps, Madam Chair?
This is the most transparent
Can we ask a few
process.
questions? If you're interested in answering, can we ask a few other questions that are not exactly?
The detailed maps are prepared by the Assembly and State Senate elections committees.
So the reality is that it was a collaboration and we can get those specifics, but I think what's most important is the maps are out there for people to see, to evaluate, to make a judgment on. The lines are the lines.
Madam Chair, but
so we are that
when you consume something, don't you want to know who makes it? When you are presented with something, don't you want to know where it's coming from? Don't voters deserve
when
to
I
know?
go to a restaurant, I don't need to meet the chef. I just enjoy the food.
Condescending. That's definitely the word that comes to mind for me when I watch those videos. That is different Democrats up in Sacramento in leadership who are basically telling people to sit down and shut up. Stop asking who drew the maps. And you don't need to know who drew the maps. You have that first clip where basically she said the legislature drew it and that's it. That's all you need to know. They laughed at Assemblywoman Machado, who asked the question, who drew the maps? And they said, well, you're not in leadership. So, haha, you don't get to figure out who drew the maps. And then you have Cervantes was the next clip. And basically she went into a Trump tirade because she was pressed on questions, couldn't answer anything. So she went on this whole, it's all Trump's fault, all these different issues that she wanted to bring up. And then when pressed again, she couldn't answer, said it was the most transparent process. And then finally, that was the chair of the elections committee, Pellerin, who said that, hey, if you go to a restaurant, I don't need to meet the chef who prepared my meal. Kind of nice to know whether or not it's a good chef or not. But regardless, these are all condescending answers to people who are asking the simple question, who drew the maps? We need to know who drew these maps because there's probably an issue of bias. There might be an issue of motive of why these maps were drawn a certain way. And I'm going to put it out there that there is an individual by the name of Paul Mitchell. No, not the shampoo guy, is one name that has been tossed around. Paul Mitchell is a head of Redistricting Partners, is a data consultant, a firm based in Sacramento. He's conducted the redistricting for states, cities, school boards, and community college districts, more than 100 in total, including the Los Angeles City Council Redistricting Commission, the Long Beach Independent Redistricting Commission, commissions in Oakland, Berkeley, and Mesa, Arizona. His work includes racially polarized voting analysis, and demographics have aided dozens of agencies as they navigate the California and Federal Voting Rights Act. He also works with nonprofit organizations such as the Irvine Foundation, ACLU, an Advancement Project, and Common Cause, and Election Reformers. Now, the reason that I say it's likely this individual, this gentleman named Paul Mitchell, is because he admitted to so. In a Politico article, when it was reported that he would be the one helping to draw the maps, this was his quote. "I have never done a partisan redistricting," Mitchell said this week, "until just now, and basically admitting that I'm doing this because Democrats have asked me to make a map that favors Democrats. Now, if you want to know even more about Paul Mitchell, you can go and look at this tweet thread by Jennifer Van Laar on X, where she says, "What if I told you that the man drawing the proposed new California congressional maps counts almost every single Democrat legislator in the state as his client? Conflict of interest much?" According to multiple Sacramento sources, Paul Mitchell, the owner of Redistricting Partners and VP of Political Data, is drawing the redistricting maps Gavin Newsom will attempt to ram down our throats. He's married to the head of Planned Parenthood California. His firm, PDI, refuses to do business with Republicans. Mitchell should be banned from participating in any redistricting after his successful campaign to hoodwink California Citizen Redistricting Commission back in 2011, which is documented in this ProPublica article, where it says the author of one San Joaquin's maps was not identified on the Facebook page, but ProPublica has learned it was Paul Mitchell, a redistricting consultant hired by McNeary. Mitchell's firm, PDI, was the leading political data firm in the state for 3 decades, working with anyone who could pay. In 2021, without warning, they announced they'd only work with progressives and close the accounts of Republicans and Republican-aligned groups. So that is sort of a look into Paul Mitchell's history and his company. They are clearly biased towards one way, which is to Democrats and progressives here in the state of California. Now, they mention his wife, who is the head of Planned Parenthood affiliates in California. Her name is Jodie Hicks, and they were named the top 5 power couple by Capital Weekly. In the Capital Weekly publication, there's a picture of them at Christmas. That's Paul Mitchell and Jodie Hicks on the right, with Kamala Harris and her husband, whose name I already forgot because he's been gone for a while, the first man partner, whatever you want to call him. Jodie Hicks and Paul Mitchell. It's almost unfair how influential Jodie Hicks and Paul Mitchell are as a couple. Hicks is the CEO and president of the Planned Parenthood affiliates of California, arguably the state's most active combatant in this era's culture war over abortion. Her leadership on the issue stretches far beyond the boundaries of the Golden State, with her voice carrying considerable weight nationwide. Then it goes on to talk about Paul Mitchell, who we've already discussed. So this is a married couple. They are a power couple here in Sacramento. And obviously they have a lot of influence over what happens with Democrats. So now let's paint the picture. We have Paul Mitchell, who admits in a Politico article that he is drawing a partisan map. We have proof that his company does not work with Republicans. It is only slanted towards one way, which is for Democrats and progressives. Now, we also know that his wife is the head of Planned Parenthood affiliates. So now we have another connection to paint this picture a little bit more fully. And I think there might be a little motive as to why Jodie Hicks might be so involved or getting her husband involved in redrawing these districts. And I'm just going to say it right now, I'm sure you're not going to be shocked when it's not about democracy. It's about getting back at Trump because she has an axe to grind. And she has a big one to grind. It's a $300 million axe to grind. In fact, California Planned Parenthood, the largest abortion provider in the state, lost all federal funding this week under a preliminary court order that allows the money to be withheld while a larger legal dispute plays out. Planned Parenthood Federation of America sued the Trump administration on behalf of its members earlier in July over provisions of the Congressional Reconciliation Bill, also known as the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, that prohibited Medicaid reimbursements for large nonprofit health clinics that provide abortions. That totaled about $300 million that they lost out on in the state of California. That was a huge amount of federal funding. So I would imagine Jodie Hicks, who is the CEO of an organization that just lost that amount of money because Trump passed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, she's got a little bit of an axe to grind. And let me say, she's not hiding it very well. This is a clip of her at the Newsom press conference, and I put that in quotes because it was more a presidential campaign rally paid for by taxpayers. Here's a clip of her at the Newsom press conference, letting you know her thoughts about the redistricting battle.
You take away our freedoms, we'll take away your seats. We'll flip the House. They know that will be the response, but what are they going to do as a response to that? They're going to rig elections. They're going to rig elections in Texas, wherever they need to, in order to ensure that they have power. So let me be clear. If Republicans are successful in consolidating power, safeguarding their majority in Congress, a national abortion ban is not off the table.
So clearly not really about democracy or saving democracy. It's about abortion, which is the point of her whole organization that she is running as CEO that lost out on $300 million. Her and her husband, who were very influential. It's been noted that Paul Mitchell is behind these maps, but Democrats don't want to tell you who drew the maps. They don't want to tell you Paul Mitchell drew the maps and that he's married to Jodie Hicks, because as soon as this all comes out that it was drawn by a partisan who only works with Democrats and progressives, and his wife is the CEO of Planned Parenthood, and she has an axe to grind with President Trump, and this is all out of spite, all of a sudden you lose a little bit of that argument to the people that these are legitimate maps. And instead, this is all just being done as one big charade to get back at Trump. And remember, their whole argument is that they need to save democracy by disenfranchising voters in their own state. That's how they want to protect the disenfranchised voices of Texas, is by disenfranchising voices in California. So let me know in the comments what you think. Do you believe it's Paul Mitchell who drew the maps and Jodie Hicks had a little bit of an influence on him? And do you think it's all out of spite for President Trump? And also let me know, why do you think Democrats are afraid to admit who actually drew the maps? Let me know in the comments, and make sure you like, share, subscribe, review, all that stuff. And we'll see you on the next one. Later.